Hi everyone, and welcome back to Zone 3 and Thriving. I am Jacqueline, and today I want to talk to you about the pros and cons of self-watering planters or containers that we use in our homes and in our gardens. But particularly, I want to focus on what's in the garden because there's some things that nobody tells you. So I'm going to share those experiences that I've had, and then you can decide in the spring if you want to go the route of using self-watering containers or if you want to use regular pots. Self-watering containers are containers that contain a wicking system that draws the water up from the bottom of the pot. Sometimes they're an actual wick, sometimes they're a material, and sometimes they're just a reservoir like this one that holds the water in it, and then the plant takes it up into the root system and it waters the plant. There are many different types of self-watering containers out there. Proven Winners offers an insert that you put in your pots, and you can buy them based on the size of your pot, that also contains a spout that you can put the water into. It collects in the reservoir that is in the bottom of your pot, and then it feeds the plants as needed. It even has a bobble, I'll call it a bobble, but it's a measure that tells you when you need to water in that tube that goes into your planter. And the kind of planters you're using with these is any kind of flower pot that does not have holes in it in the bottom for drainage. Now, as I mentioned here, this is a dollar store pot. It is also a self-watering pot, but it is not a wicking system. There is not a spout on it. It's a very simple system that you can water your plants in. When you use these, they have a hole here, and this is where you fill the reservoir with water, and then the plant will draw it up into the soil. These are small containers, so you're probably going to use them in your house as a house plant. So you're going to avoid some of the issues, and I mean, sadly, there are issues with self-watering pots that I don't think manufacturers have thought of, but I'm going to share my experiences with you on them. But this is a very nice pot, works really well inside. I would not use it outside because it's just too small for my plants, but definitely great for the house plant. And I haven't found any drawbacks in using this in the house. So this is a positive. Here's another one that I want to show, and I use these for my cactus plants. This is a larger form. This is something I got from Walmart. I also have some really large planters in the same styling. Once again, it's a reservoir. It's gonna draw the water up into the root system. The same methodology as the little plant. In fact, I have a cactus just sitting in here because I haven't potted up. You can see the reservoir there and how it's gonna wick that water up into the plant. Once again, the roots are gonna do the work and draw that water in. So that's a really good example. Once again, too small of a pot to use out in the garden, perfect for a house plant. You fill the reservoir with water on these plants when the pot feels light, or when you stick your finger into the pot down a couple inches and it feels dry, then you know you need to fill it. But the plant will only take up what it needs normally, and you won't get an overly soaked plant. That's the benefit of these. I'm going to show you another one here that I have, and this is one of my giant pots. This one was outside. This is a big one, and you can see here there is the reservoirs on this one, and I use these now in my driveway for my bedding plants, and I love these. These do not have a spout on them to fill. The only way you're going to fill these is through the top. So you're going to be pouring water into your plant at the top, and then the water's gonna permeate through the soil, through the root ball, into that reservoir. And then when you're not watering the plant is gonna draw up that water into the root system and feed the plant. And it will also draw up any water that you've added from a watering can that you've added fertilizer to. It's going to draw that up. So that reservoir is going to keep that plant hydrated And I usually fill these in the summer approximately a week and a half, 2 weeks when it's dry. If we have a lot of rain, then I can tell by the weight of the pot, just by moving it, how much water I need to add to these plants. Also by sticking my finger down into it. It does not have the bobble in the spout like the Proven Winner containers. These are Canadian Tire that can tell you by looking at it how much water it needs. What are the benefits of using self-watering planters or containers like these little ones or the big ones? The benefits is it's going to reduce your workload of how often you need to water your plants. Depending on the size of the pot and what you have in that pot, if they're real thirsty plants, then you need to water more. But on average here in Saskatchewan, we get some really hot days into the 30s, high 30s degrees Celsius. So that's warm for us. We're a dry climate in the summer. I only water every 1.5 to 2 weeks my big planters, which saves me a lot of work. And then I don't have to fertilize as often either, because when I do water and I fertilize with a liquid soluble fertilizer, then the reservoir will allow the roots to draw it up. So that's the benefit. So you're saving on water. If you pay for water, I have a well, but if you're paying for water, you're saving your costs of having to water your containers every single day in the heat. Now I have some other examples here and I will post them up here. And I also have hanging baskets that were self-watering. When the reservoirs are smaller on those self-watering, you must water them more, especially if they're in full heat. I don't find those quite as beneficial because the reservoir is small, the containers are smaller, so you're still watering more, but it still allows you to go 2 or 3 days in between watering, depending on the placement of the container. If the container is in full sun and it's a hanging basket, which is smaller, then you're probably looking at every other day for watering. If it's in a shaded position, you might be looking at every 3 or 4 days for a hanging basket. So a little bit different than using the big planters or even a planter like this. The depth of the reservoir makes a difference too. The deeper the reservoir, the more water it's going to hold, the less likelihood you need to water. But all in all, the benefits of self-watering containers really does save you a lot of time. And in the long run, money for your water bills to fill these. Now, the upfront cost of going with self-watering containers or inserts is high. Self-watering containers tend to be more expensive than a regular planter or container. The inserts are pricey, and I'll show a price of the Proven Winner inserts here, how much they are. So they're very expensive. Self-watering pots, you're looking at approximately anywhere from these small ones were only like $1.50, but these are dollar store ones. But you could be looking at these ones, which are Walmart. I think we're around $10 for the houseplant version. But for the big ones here, you're looking at approximately $30. And I mean, what you're getting with these ones in particular, particularly the bigger ones, is you're getting a thinner plastic that is really quite bendable. These aren't the heavy duty ones. So I'm saving money on these, although the quality isn't as good as a planter that I would get that's self-watering at Home Depot. And they do sell them. That's roughly around $80. So you got to keep costs in mind when you're buying planters. This is something that is an investment that you want to last a long time, and you need to care for it, especially the ones with more flimsy plastic, because if you try to pick these up with this edge, eventually out in the garden in the heat, these edges will crack and break. So consider the investment on these. And you know, if you have a drip irrigation system in and you run your drip frequently, then you probably don't need self-contained watering. Okay, but if you want to run drip with these to have it top up the reservoirs, that's also an option using drip. So you got to weigh the pros and cons. Frequent, regular watering for containers is very beneficial to the plants because they don't have that irregular watering that happens. And that's where drip irrigation is beneficial, and self-watering planters and containers are beneficial because they don't have those ups and downs of irregular watering unless you forget to fill your reservoirs or turn your drip on, etc. Unless you have it on a timer. So those are some of the benefits. But there are a lot of issues with self-watering containers that nobody tells you. And you're going to hear about a few of them, but I bet you haven't thought about this one that I'm going to share from my personal experiences. So some of the negativity surrounding self-watering containers is too much water. Over-watering your containers, whether it's through the spout that goes into them, or if you're just refilling the reservoirs on these constantly. What can happen is that your root balls on your plants can get too wet from over-watering. Now, I have not had that experience with houseplants with these smaller containers whatsoever because I don't have to water that often, so it's never been an issue. But on these big beasts of self-watering containers, that is an issue. Number one, there's no reservoir on this to check, okay? So it's just what you have inside of the container. Number two, if you love to water, you definitely can overwater. If you have somebody water your containers, they can overwater because you're watering from the top on these. So therefore, you can rot the root ball on your plants. And that is huge. And of course, there's a cost to that with having to replant your planters. And of course, finding those beautiful plants that you love. So keep that in mind when you're doing self-watering containers. Now here's an issue that nobody tells you, and it really depends on where you live. And this is a big one that I learned the hard way. I do have window boxes as well that were self-watering. They have the reservoir in them, and I'll post some footage here on that showing those planters. And I mean, the plants do beautiful in those window boxes and in the containers that are self-watering because they always have that water available to them. However, here's the drawback. Number one, the thinner plastic, particularly in the window boxes, will bulge. So it will bulge out in the front from the weight of the soil having too much water in it. And so your plastic has to be very, very hard and firm and thick so that doesn't happen. Ideally, when you have plastic self-watering window boxes, you want to put them into another window box that doesn't have that give to prevent that bowing that happens from all the soil, all the water, and then the plants pushing the edges out. That's particularly a problem if you overwater your self-watering window boxes. That extra water that has nowhere to go because there's no drainage on that window box forces it to bulge out. In fact, if you don't pay attention to how much water is in those window boxes, you could come up and go to water them one day and find the plants are swimming in the water because it has so much water in it, it has nowhere to go. And that can happen with these as well. And one of the key things, it's not so much the gardener that runs into that trouble, it's Mother Nature causing you problems. Mother Nature, who loves to dump a pile of rain on me here all at once, causes havoc with my self-watering planters, window boxes, and hanging baskets. If they do not have a reservoir on them like this, that extra water cannot drain. It's got nowhere to go because there's no holes in the bottom because your reservoir is there and there's no holes in the sides. So it fills up, it plugs up, and that's why I use landscape fabric in them to help with the plugging and lining them. Just a heads up, that works great. There's a pro tip for you. And it has nowhere to go. So your plants are swimming. So one day you come out after a rainstorm and your plants are swimming around, maybe not even in the soil anymore, and it's a soggy mess and they weigh a ton. So you're having to remove that window box or you're having to tip that pot over like this, and I've tipped these over to get that water out, let it drain very carefully, and they weigh a ton. It's very hard on the back when that happens. So keep that in mind. But there is a solution for it, because I've had this happen where my plants were so full of water, the reservoir was overloaded, that I had to do something about it. And tipping them over was not an easy thing to do. So what I recommend for those that love their self-watering containers, and if you get heavy rainstorms that will fill up this planter with water, I recommend you do this, and I'm going to show you. See all these little holes along the sides? This is above the reservoir. The reservoir is down here. These are up on the sides. And you'll see I have them every so often all around the edges of the planter. So I've taken and I've drilled holes in a triangle pattern up and down into this container above the reservoir. And what that does, and you can see it right here up high, is that is going to allow that plant to drain. And you can see the light coming through those holes on the side, because your plants are going to be sitting up in this area about an inch, inch and a half from the top, give or take. So when they get soaked, that water is going to shoot out of those holes and drain that container. And then you don't have a soggy plant that's showing signs of root rot or the plant swimming. And that is going to save you a bunch of headaches. That works well with the window boxes. It works well with these containers that do not have drain holes. Ideally, and I do have some of the larger ones of these that I use, which I love because they have that drain on them, is that if these get overfilled, the water has a place to go. The reservoir only holds so much, so anything above and beyond that actually will come out of this hole. And you can test that out by putting your hose into your plant or a water can and filling that up, and you'll see when it's got enough in the reservoir, it will drain out. But people don't tell you this if you live in a climate where you get heavy downpours. For us, it seems like it's all or nothing when it comes to rain. The other thing is with these planters is if you leave them out in the winter, I get a lot of snow and freezing weather. Those window boxes should be covered, because the snow gets in them, piles up in them, the ice gets in them, and they start bulging from that as well. So once again, having them in another planter helps to prevent that bulge, but they're still going to get all that snow and ice built up in them, which is not good for them. So you really need to protect those window boxes and cover them over for the winter, and then uncover them in the spring. Those are the pros and cons of self-watering containers, planters, and hanging baskets. Now, personally, I love them. There are areas like my driveway where I don't want to be going and putting a lot of drip lines in. So they work great. I go out there, once a week and check them. Every half week to 2 weeks, I water. If there's a heavy rainfall, I go out and check them again to make sure that those holes that I put in the containers are actually draining. And it has worked very well for me by doing that. So that's kind of alleviated a lot of issues. So yes, I love self-watering containers, and I really prefer to purchase the ones with a drain on them, because that's going to save me having to worry about root rot and over watering. So I hope you find this very beneficial. Like I said, good self-watering heavy-duty plastic containers and inserts are an investment. But more and more companies are bringing in lighter plastics that are more of this styling with the drainage on them, that are more economical. So when you can buy big containers like this one for $29.95 and add $29.99, I should say, at Canadian Tire, and add to your collection every year, it's a worthwhile investment. Just remember, don't move these when they're full of water and soil, because the plastic is thinner and they will crack, especially in the heat. So I hope you find this helpful. I wanted to provide you with some information on this because this is what I've learned about using self-watering containers. And frankly, they are truly worthwhile. However, you need to be mindful of your climate and what kind of weather you get and how much moisture you receive. So thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found this very helpful. I know I learned through trial and error on dealing with containers that were so overloaded, they were swamped with water, and how to remedy them fast so I didn't lose my plants. So I'm hoping my tips help you. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Bye-bye.